Let's talk about YouTube. From a marketing standpoint, a lot of our clients, we're telling them they should be utilizing YouTube with their videos that we're doing. We put almost all of our videos that we produce on YouTube as a sample of work. But I've heard a lot of grumblings from professionals about things being cherry-picked off of YouTube. There's nothing to stop somebody from downloading a video off of YouTube.
Anything on the internet is easy to copy. And the thing that is common, or at least used to be more common, is on website design. You do a promotional video. Let's say you put this video on your website. And a competitor in Charlotte says, hey, that's a good video. I think my customers would appreciate hearing that. And they don't copy the video, and I forget the code name for it, but they do basically a pass-through link on their blog site.
Okay.
If you...
So they're linking to my page.
Not linking to your page. So if you go, for example, you have a blog on WordPress right now.
Right.
One of the functions on WordPress last I checked was I can play a video from YouTube directly onto my WordPress site. So if you go to my WordPress site, you'll see the video, press play, and it plays on my site. Now,
You're embedding it.
Technically, I've made no copy, because what the computer is doing is the computer is literally like conveying the file as it's played on YouTube onto my website.
Right.
There is a temporary copy of some sort being made on my webpage, but the content still resides at YouTube. It's that pass-through plane. That happens all the time. And the vast majority of works on YouTube are not commercial in nature. They're not put out there for purposes of making money for me. In fact, it's very difficult for the rights holders. People typically make money on YouTube by selling advertising, and then they don't care where it's being clicked as long as the clicks are happening.
Right.
The advertisers for their page are happy. But in your case, you wouldn't be happy about that at all. It doesn't come up often, and I think it's because people know that once you put it on YouTube, it's out there for the whole world to use and see. But it does happen on occasions that people don't like their content pass-through viewed. And I haven't looked at this in over a year, but YouTube was playing with their terms of use. And if somebody came in and said, hey, my YouTube video is being passed through, played on my competitor's site, the first thing we'd have to do is go to your YouTube terms of use to see if you consented to any form of pass-through linking for YouTube.
And if I didn't, then do I have recourse? Can I say, that's my video, you don't have a right to use it on your website?
If there was no consent to the YouTube terms of use, the competitor is making an ephemeral, very short-termed, immediate copy on their website of your work, which would be an act of infringement if it was without your permission. So yes, but we'd have to look real close, because I think YouTube tried to inoculate their users from this type of problem.
So what if somebody takes my video off YouTube and edits it into something else, but uses my footage that was on YouTube?
Okay, two different things. So YouTube does not have an export function, at least not on the user side. So I don't think that when you put your content onto YouTube, you've consented to third parties. I mean, very, very unlikely that you've expressly consented to third parties making their own download copy. Making a copy is a violation. The only question is, has YouTube, have you signed a unilateral license or consent to third parties viewing through YouTube? Download is a different act. Pulling content off of a YouTube and recording it yourself is almost certainly an unauthorized copy. Now, but you can get back to, it would be an act of infringement. Now, of course, there are issues about fair use. Why are you doing this? Are you teaching a class on videography and you want to use this for part of your course instruction? Are you using it for social commentary or criticism? That also might make it a fair use. Why are you using it? If you're downloading it for your own commercial gain, probably not going to be a fair use. If you are downloading it for, you said to modify it. Now remember, copying is an act of copyright infringement, and so is modifying, making a derivative work. Now again, could it be excuse? Could it be a fair use? If your purpose of copying it is transformative and artistic in nature, there's oftentimes a fair use argument. But the act of changing somebody else's work is, and I'm going to be technical, fair use does not make it not copyright infringement, it just excuses the infringement. So if you change somebody else's copyrighted work without their permission, if you modify it, and you can still see the resemblance of the original copyrighted work, you've almost certainly committed copyright infringement. If you're doing this for artistic or social commentary purposes, you might have a fair use argument that would excuse the infringement.
Or if you're teaching a class. If someone's teaching a class about video production and proper techniques of, how to edit a video, say for example, or how to shoot, great landscape shots of Raleigh, and they download my footage from YouTube and they're showing that. Maybe they've edited it, maybe they haven't, but they're showing that in their class. This is what you do, this is how you do it. That's okay?
Well, it might be. No, but what if you have a licensing practice where I have an educator's rate that if you want to use this part of your teaching class, you pay me, $10 per click or whatever. So fair use is very fact dependent, and people, again, like to talk about fair use a lot. Very rarely is it worth litigating. The most interesting copyright cases are quite often exactly that, transformative, artistic fair use. But they're more difficult cases in the commercial context.
Is there anything you feel like we didn't get into that might be helpful for creative professionals just to keep in mind when they are out there producing work and either selling it or posting it on their own social media sites, YouTube, etc., that they need to remember? One
thing we hadn't touched on, one thing that I think bears repeating, if you're in the work of selling copyrightable content, to include video content, and that's where everything's going towards is video, and you have a work that you want to sell more than once, particularly if you think it has mass retail legs or any significant repeat use, you really ought to register the works. And something we haven't talked about is when it comes time to enforce your copyrights, there's a substantial difference in your rights, your enforcement rights, if the work was registered prior to that infringer's first act of infringement.
Okay.
The thing is that you have to register a work before suing the infringer. It's a prerequisite to get into federal court.
Okay.
But if that work was registered prior to that infringer's first act of infringement, you're in a significantly better position to enforce your works, much more remedies. And the last thing, just to repeat, whenever you're working in this area, it really pays dividends to reduce to writing what the agreement and mutual expectations are. Because this is very intellectual property, particularly in the copyright side, is very susceptible to he said, she said, and just simple misunderstandings about what each side thought the other would or could do with the works.
Thank you very much for joining us. We really appreciate you sharing all that insight with us, and I'm sure, hopefully, this will prevent issues within our community in the future.
Oh, you're very welcome. Thank you for having me.